Welcome to r/entitled people, where Karen is furious over the new Shrek 5 trailer. My Karen mom had a meltdown over the new Shrek 5 trailer. Last night started off like any other night in our house. My mom, dad, and I were all just sitting in the living room, casually watching YouTube videos on the TV. We had just finished dinner, and my mom was sipping on her nightly cup of chamomile tea while my dad scrolled through his phone. I was half listening to whatever video was playing, but mostly just waiting for something interesting to come on. Then, out of nowhere, a Shrek 5 teaser trailer popped up as a suggested video. I practically jumped in excitement. Oh my gosh, they're actually making another Shrek movie? I grabbed the remote and clicked on it before anyone else could say anything. I mean, this was big news. The last Shrek movie came out when I was a little kid, and now, finally, after all these years, we're finally getting another one. My dad gave a small chuckle. Wow, I thought they were done with those movies. My mom, however, didn't say anything. She just shifted slightly in her seat, staring at the screen with mild disinterest. That was the first sign of trouble. On the magic mirror, an image of Shrek appeared, except he wasn't his usual ogre self. Instead, the reflection showed him with a chiseled, muscular body, complete with abs and bulging arms. His whole family freaked out, with Donkey screaming something ridiculous in the background. Shrek, looking absolutely bewildered, blurted out, "Who's making this stuff?" Then, right on cue, Pinocchio popped up, wide-eyed, hands raised. "Not me," he squeaked, but his nose shot forward immediately, proving he was lying. I burst out laughing. My dad let out a chuckle too, but my mom? Oh no, she was not amused. She sat up straight and let out this deep sigh, like she had just witnessed something truly offensive. Oh, for crying out loud, she muttered, shaking her head. I glanced over at her. What? She turned to me, looking genuinely upset. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't even watch a simple kids movie these days without them cramming crude humor into it." I blinked. "Mom, it's just a joke. Shrek has always had jokes like this. It's nothing new." "No," she snapped, setting her tea down with a little too much force. "It's getting worse. Back in the 80s and the early 90s, movies didn't need to rely on this kind of humor to be funny. They had class. They had heart." I sighed, already knowing exactly where this was going. "Mom, Shrek has always had this kind of humor. The first movie literally had jokes about Lord Farquaad compensating for something." "That's different," she argued. "That went over kids' heads. This is blatant. They're making a joke about men's bodies, and it's inappropriate. And the lying joke with Pinocchio? It's just disgusting." I scoffed. "Mom, it's literally the same type of jokes they've always made." "No, you're too young to understand," she said, waving a dismissive hand at me. "You've grown up with this garbage, so you think it's normal. But back in my day, we had real movies. We had The Land Before Time, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast. Movies that didn't need to rely on this filth to entertain people." At this point, my dad, who had just been completely silent, finally chimed in. "Honey, it's really not that serious. It's just a joke. If you don't like it, we don't have to watch the movie." But that was the wrong thing to say, because my mom immediately turned her frustration onto him. "That's not the point, Mark. The point is that movies these days are just lazy. They throw in crude jokes instead of writing meaningful stories, and everyone just accepts it like it's normal." My dad slowly leaned back in his chair and raised his hands in surrender. All right, I'm staying out of this." This wasn't the first time Dad had tried to reason with her about something like this. A few months ago, we were watching an old sitcom, and there was a joke about a husband pretending to be sick to get out of chores. My mom went off about how disrespectful it was to portray marriage that way. Dad tried to tell her that it was just a joke, but she shut him down, saying he had no idea how media influenced people's behavior. Another time, we were watching a superhero movie, and she got mad because the female lead was wearing an outfit she thought was too revealing. Dad again tried to calm her down, but she just kept ranting about how Hollywood had lost its morals. I sighed and ran a hand down my face. "Mom, you're acting like this one joke ruined the entire movie. It was a teaser trailer. We don't even know what the whole movie is about yet." "That's exactly my point," she said, now completely worked up. "If this is what they think is funny enough to be in the teaser, imagine what the full movie is going to be like. I bet it's filled with this garbage." I groaned. "Mom, if you don't want to watch it, then just don't watch it. But don't act like Shrek was ever some pure, wholesome franchise that suddenly got ruined." She shook her head, grabbing her tea again. "I just can't believe this is what the world has come to." At that point, I gave up. There was no reasoning with her. The Shrek 5 teaser trailer had apparently confirmed all her worst fears about modern movies, and there was nothing I could say to change her mind. My dad wisely stayed quiet, and I just went back to watching YouTube, pretending the argument had never happened. Later that night, I overheard my mom ranting on the phone to one of her friends, saying something about how Hollywood had lost its morals, and how she just wanted to watch a movie without being disgusted, over a joke about Shrek's abs and Pinocchio lying. I can only imagine what's going to happen when she sees the full movie. Our next post is about an entitled mom who does something so horrible that she ends up regretting it for the rest of her life. My mom secretly canceled my college application. It was the worst mistake she ever made. I had my whole future planned out. Ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of going to college, moving out, and finally gaining my independence. My grades were solid, I had a decent SAT score, and I spent my entire senior year applying to different universities, excited for what was ahead. But there was one thing standing in my way: my mom. Now, I love my mom, but she's always been a bit controlling. Growing up, she dictated every aspect of my life: what I wore, what I ate, who I could be friends with. She had this vision of me staying home forever, helping around the house, and eventually taking care of her when she got older. The idea of me moving out, let alone going off to college, was always something that she never supported. It wasn't always so obvious. When I was younger, she made it seem like she was just being a protective mother, that she only wanted what was best for me. But as I got older, I started noticing a pattern. Every time I got excited about something that would lead to independence, she found a way to undermine it. When I wanted to join clubs in high school, she suddenly needed my help at home more often. When I talked about getting my own car, she reminded me of all the hidden costs and how it would be better to just rely on her. Looking back, it was all just a way to keep me from growing beyond her reach. At first, she acted like she was on board with the college process. She smiled and nodded when I talked about my applications, even pretended to be excited when I got my acceptance letter from my dream school. But there was always something off about her reactions. She never brought it up herself, never asked me about deadlines or next steps. Whenever I mentioned things like housing deposits or orientation, she changed the subject or made some excuse to end the conversation. I should have known something wasn't right. The first real red flag came when my best friend, Sarah, mentioned that she had already put in her housing deposit. That sent me into a panic because I hadn't received anything from the university about next steps. I figured maybe I had just missed an email, so I went home and checked my inbox. Nothing. No confirmation email, no request for transcripts, no financial aid update. My heart sank. I decided to call the admissions office, figuring it was some sort of clerical error. The woman on the second end of the line was polite, but confused when I gave her my name. "Sorry, but I don't see an active application for you," she said. My stomach dropped. That can't be right. I was accepted. She asked me to hold while she checked something. A few moments later, she came back and hit me with the truth. Someone had canceled my enrollment. I could barely form words. Canceled? Who? How? She hesitated before answering. "Well, the system shows that the cancellation request came from a parent or guardian. Since you're under 18, we require parental consent for enrollment changes." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. There was only one person who had access to that information. I thanked the woman, hung up, and just sat there for a moment, trying to process what I had just learned. My own mother had sabotaged my future behind my back. I stormed downstairs, finding my mom casually watching one of her soap operas like she hadn't just ruined my life. "Did you cancel my college application?" I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't even look up. "You weren't ready to leave home. I did what was best for you." "What's best for me? Mom, you..." I was so angry I couldn't even form a sentence. "You lied to me. You went behind my back and destroyed everything I worked for." She sighed, finally turning to face me, looking utterly unbothered. "You don't need to go to some fancy college. Community college is just as good, and you can live at home where you belong. You're not ready to be on your own." "I am ready. I've been ready. You just can't stand the idea of me living my own life." "That's ridiculous," she scoffed. "You don't know what's best for you, but I do. You're still a child, and children don't make good decisions." Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but I refused to cry. "I'm not a child, Mom. I'm about to be an adult, and I deserve the chance to live my life without you controlling everything." "After everything I've done for you?" Her voice was suddenly sharp. "I gave you a roof over your head, food to eat, and this is how you repay me? By running off to some overpriced college just to prove a point?" It's not about proving a point, it's about having a future. She stood up and crossed her arms. And what about me? Who's going to take care of me? You expect me to just sit here alone while you go off and play grown-up? And there it was, the truth. It had never been about what was best for me, it was about what was best for her. I didn't even bother arguing anymore. I turned around, ran back upstairs, and called my dad, who had been divorced from my mom for years and had always been more supportive, and I told him everything. He was furious. The next day, he picked me up, and we drove straight to the university. He explained the situation to the admissions office, providing proof of my identity and the original acceptance letter. Thankfully, because the semester hadn't started yet, they were able to reinstate my enrollment, but only after I changed all my contact information and ensured that my mom would never have access to my records again. When I got home that evening, I packed my things. I wasn't staying another minute in that house. My mom acted like I was being dramatic, saying I'd changed my mind once I came to my senses, but I didn't. I moved in with my dad for the summer, worked my butt off to save money, and when the fall semester rolled around, I left for college without looking back. My mom tried to call me, but I ignored most of her messages. She left long, guilt-tripping voicemails about how she was only trying to protect me and how she couldn't believe I was abandoning my family. I never responded. I knew that if I let her, she would drag me back into her control. It's been a couple of years now, and I'm thriving. I have my own apartment, a great group of friends, and I'm working towards my degree. I haven't spoken to my mom since, but honestly, that's all on her. She tried to steal my future from me, and I wasn't about to let her win. Am I the jerk for exercising while pregnant? My mother-in-law sure thinks so. I'm currently 28 years old and pregnant with my first child. Throughout my pregnancy, I've been staying active by going to the gym, as my doctor has assured me it's completely safe. I don't do anything extreme, just light weights, walking, and stretching to stay healthy for myself and the baby. It helps me feel better physically and mentally, and I know that staying active can actually make labor and recovery easier. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law doesn't see it this way. From the moment she found out I was still working out, she's made constant comments about how I'm selfish and putting my baby in danger. She insists that pregnant women shouldn't be exerting themselves, saying things like, "Back in my day, women knew how to take care of themselves. They didn't go running around like teenagers while they were expecting." I've tried to explain to her that my doctor is on board with my routine, but she just won't listen. Instead, she keeps making passive-aggressive remarks, acting like I'm recklessly endangering my baby. At first, I tried to brush it off. I told myself she came from a different time and that she just didn't understand modern prenatal care. But it didn't stop. Every time she saw me, she'd make another comment. If she noticed I was in workout clothes, she'd sigh loudly and shake her head. If she heard I had gone to the gym, she'd mutter something about how I was going to regret it. She even tried to get my husband to intervene, telling him he should talk some sense into me before it was too late. He's been on my side though throughout all of this, reassuring me that I'm doing nothing wrong. He tells her to drop it, but she never does. Instead, she just finds new ways to bring it up, like telling stories about how she knew a woman who exercised during pregnancy and something bad happened. It's always vague, always dramatic, always meant to scare me. Today, though, she pushed it too far. My husband and I had gone over to her house for dinner. Everything was fine at first, but then she started up again. Out of nowhere, she said, "You'll regret it when something happens. Just wait. One day you'll be wishing you had listened to me." Something in me snapped. I had been patient. I had been polite. I had tried to let it go. But this time, she was practically implying that I was going to lose my baby because I was taking care of myself. I turned to her and without thinking said, "You need to stop, right now. I'm done listening to your nonsense. You have no idea what you're talking about and you're not my doctor. Stay out of my business." Her mouth dropped open. She gasped, putting her hand to her chest. "Well, I never. You don't have to be so disrespectful. I'm just trying to help you, and you talk to me like this?" My husband quickly stepped in. "Mom, you've been warned to drop this. You keep pushing and pushing, and you can't be surprised that you finally had enough." She turned her glare onto him. "And you're just going to let her talk to me like that? I'd raised you better than this." "No, Mom," he said firmly. "You're the one who needs to stop. You've been making her feel like a bad mother before she's even had the baby, and that's not okay." She stood up abruptly, crossing her arms. "I just can't believe this is the thanks I get for caring. Fine, do whatever you want, but don't come crying to me when something happens." At that point, I was done. My husband and I left shortly after. I was still shaking from frustration when we got home. I've never spoken to her like that before, and she's acting like I committed some great offense. She's telling the rest of the family that I was disrespectful and lashed out at her for no reason. My husband is fully on my side, but thinks I could have handled it more calmly. I honestly don't know. Was I really out of line? Now I don't know what to do next. Should I apologize just to keep the peace, or do I stand my ground? I feel like if I back down, she's just going to keep pushing and pushing. But at the same time, I don't want to be the one causing a rift in the family. I don't know if I was wrong to snap, but I do know one thing. If she keeps this up, she won't be seeing much of me or the baby once they arrive. Not the jerk. Your mother-in-law isn't a doctor, but she sure acts like she knows more than they do. You've been patient, you've explained the facts, and yet she keeps doubling down on outdated myths and fear-mongering. At some point, enough is enough. You weren't disrespectful. You set a boundary after being repeatedly harassed. If she truly cared about your well-being, she'd listen to you and your actual medical professionals instead of trying to control you. Stand your ground and don't let her guilt trip you into thinking you did anything wrong. Don't stop now. We've got hours of the best stories waiting for you. Tap here and keep watching. And hey, if you love these, don't forget to subscribe.